RPG Escape 2020 continues this Saturday evening, and we're with Eric Wiener, from the co-founder of Alligator Alley Entertainment, lead designer for Witch Hunter, The Invisible World, and former partner at Paradigm Concepts. I've known Eric since he was in high school, and long before you were a game designer. I want to ask you, Eric, you designed Witch Hunter, which is a wildly successful system, and
it's not that wildly successful. It's not D&D, but yeah.
All right, we're not conducting this interview on your 60-foot yacht, admittedly, but it's a very popular system. People know it, well. and it's a system that's friendly to gamers.
Oh, very much. So the whole goal is there's a mission statement, there's a vision statement or tagline, if you will, and it's swashbuckling, adventure, and horror. So sometimes those things don't go together.
Right.
So like Brotherhood of the Wolf had that incredible sort of visual impact while we were developing the original first edition, and we wanted it to feel like that. And as it turned out, the first edition I don't think delivered. So when we went back to refine for second edition, we wanted it to be throw a pull of dice down and look at a glance and know what's going on. I didn't want it to be I wanted there to be a risk and an uncertainty, but I didn't want it to be an enormous task-driven thing.
Now, the Odyssey of Witch Hunter is a very interesting one as a game and as a system, because you did the system originally, and it was under somebody else's brand, right? It was for a different game company.
Well, it was Paradigm Concepts, who I was a co-founder and partner. Original conception for Witch Hunter was Henry. Did a lot of the creative work. I did a lot of the design
Lopez.
work, right? Henry Lopez from who you spoke to today, right? And I did a lot of design work. We also brought in like outside design to create it, and we brought it through and had a fair amount of success, but I always felt that if I put a little bit of time in the lab on the rules, that it could deliver what we wanted. So when Henry and I mutually decided to each focus on an individual product line, Witch Hunter is the one that I was already a lead designer on.
Right. So, and did it change intrinsically from the time you were with Paradigm? The game was with Paradigm rather to now.
So it changed intrinsically shortly before the switch. So the second edition was originally a Paradigm publication. We had a really fairly successful Kickstarter for it. Put it together, had it hit the fulfilled it all the way out with multiple supplements. The Kickstarter had add-ons and stretch goals to reach to the point where there were 5 total products for it, just from the Kickstarter. So,
what do you think is the biggest challenge that somebody might face today? The biggest hurdles for somebody who's trying to break into game design right now?
Well, first of all, the biggest challenge is not new. It's the same challenge that everyone has always had. There's a lot of want. And there's not enough doing. And one of the things, there's a couple causes for that. Some people don't want to do the work. Well, I'm going to leave those people out. So the people that are actually going to get it done, you get afraid that whatever you made isn't good enough. And I'm going to tell you that, when we talk about, a giant brand, we'll go with, World of Darkness, right? And I'm using that because Witch Hunters has some cross appeal with World of Darkness players. Well, Vampire the Masquerade First Edition, it was a lovely story that the rules fundamentally did not function. You could kind of pretend you knew what they wanted. There was a second edition to that game almost immediately. Your first game has to come out before you can have a better iteration of it or a better game.
So great games aren't written; they're rewritten.
Well, that happens a lot for sure. Very few games are perfect out of the box, and even the ones they tend to be simpler in scope. And I don't mean that as a knock. There's a certain elegance in simplicity, but if you're trying to really do something that hasn't been done before, you're going to get it published. The masses of population will determine every single mistake you've ever made, and they will all be put on display for you in the most unflattering way possible. But that's what you do, is you just learn from that. You have to consider that to be second stage playtesting.
Esper Genesis is a project that you've been involved with.
Oh, absolutely. My partner, Rick Lescouflair, Rich does a great job with it. He knows the 5th edition inherently so well. So when he was able to adapt to the sci-fi, it was great. I mean, I'll tell you, the two biggest impacts I had on Esper Genesis was, the first was you're not going crazy enough, because he was keeping a little too conservative in the science fantasy elements. And the second one was, at the end, getting it into physical form in the production. But we're very, very pleased with that book. Physically, apparently, thematically, gameplay. It's, we had a second edition. Of course, the errata's in the second edition, but it really is, considering the size of the book, an impressively small amount of it.
And expectations had to be very high when you think about you're creating the science fiction supplement of record, or the science fiction rules, science fantasy rules, if you will, for a very well-loved, extremely popular game, So I'm guessing that there was some stress.
Yeah. Well, hopefully our expectations were as high as anybody's.
Yeah.
And we really do hope to be the science fiction game of record for that rule set. The biggest challenge that we were to face is, we set the standard to ourselves to where it needs to look like it's from the very large, well-established, wealthy, well-funded game company. We wanted to look like if, a giant of the industry like Wizards of the Coast or something produced this game, it wouldn't look particularly any better than what we produced, and I believe they did a good job of hitting it.
Yeah, that's a high standard, but it's edifying when you hit it.
Right.
Eric Wiener, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.